Welcome to our Buffalo Treaty Speakers Series. My name is Tasha Hubbard, and I'm one of the co-hosts for today. I'm really excited about our guest today, so I'll take over in a little bit.
Hi, my name is Marie-Ève Marchand. I live in Banff. I'm super excited for this speaker series to introduce you to individuals, communities, and groups who do a lot for biceps. And today we have Jolie Big Eagle.
Hi.
Thanks so much for coming, Jolie. So yeah, I've known of you for a long time. First when it was Jolie Big Eagle, and now in the new work you're doing, Jolie Big Eagle Kequahtooway, and your work with the Buffalo People Arts Institute. So yeah, we'd love to hear about the kind of work you're doing and what you'd like to share with us.
Sure. So I just wanted to say hi. I'm so glad to be here, to see your faces, and to have a little talk today. I just wanted to share that I'm in Regina, Saskatchewan. I'm on Treaty 4. I'm from White Bear First Nations, but I've grown up urban Indigenous most of my life. But I identify as Nakota Cree Soto, and so a lot of the work that I do is in the city here. It's where my home is, and so it's about, I would love to go out to White Bear more often, but sometimes our kids' school is here, our friends are here, other extended family are here. So the work that I do is centered in the urban setting. And so if you want to give me if I want to do a little introduction, or if we go right into the questions.
Maybe you can just tell us that here, you're talking in Saskatchewan, you're in Regina, isn't it? For people to know where are you based?
Yeah. So I'm living in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I work full-time as basically an artist. But I also facilitate art workshops. I'm co-founder of Buffalo People Arts Institute, and our mission is to bring back the buffalo mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally through traditional Indigenous arts, especially buffalo hide tanning. So, some people ask, well, in the beginning, I would call myself a multidisciplinary artist, and then this year I heard a new word, interdisciplinary. So I really like that because everything that I do is interconnected. I bead, I paint, I'm a fashion designer, I am a storyteller, I am a writer, but all of those things are all related to buffalo. So if there was another category, I would call myself a buffalo artist, similar to someone saying I'm a beater. So I'm a buffalo artist because I paint, write, tell stories, and my fashion is all about buffalo. So that's how come it's interdisciplinary. And but my other background, and I'll talk about that I think later, is I have degrees in mathematics, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Calgary. So I am a registered professional engineer. I still pay my dues through the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists, Saskatchewan, but I'm not practicing as an engineer.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so maybe just like how you could explain how Buffalo People Arts Institute came to be, and what some of the details about what you guys do.
Okay, so I used to, I guess I would say, own or run a business called Tatanka Boutique. And from that boutique, it was about celebrating authentic, handmade, native-made art, whether it was visual art or beading, star blankets, moccasins, jewelry, anything that was made by an Indigenous person, we would showcase in the boutique and sell. So whether we bought product from artists or we consigned. And so, we were open for 3 years here in Regina, And as we had consumers coming in and people from the community coming in, they would always say, do you have this? Or do you have this? Or do you have this? And some of it was related to really traditionally art that was considered traditionally made, like porcupine quill work, what were and rawhide, right? Specifically, like what we call rawhide or parfleche. And not a lot of people worked in those mediums. And so we thought, wouldn't it be great if we brought in artists who could teach other people how to work within those mediums? So we thought, well, this is what's wanted by the community, because we always had to turn away people because we didn't have those items. Like I remember we bought a parfleche purse when we went down to Minneapolis, and we resold it up here, and it was just a little tiny purse. It had some parfleche on the side and some deer leather in the front and the back, and it was a little bit of beadwork. And then I priced it at the price I thought it was worth, and my husband was like, that's kind of expensive. And I thought, oh no, I think it's worth it. And sure enough, the couple that came into there were two girls, they wanted to invest in it together. So one paid half and the other paid a half, and they were able to afford to buy this purse. And so we thought, we need more people to know these traditional techniques. And so that's kind of how it became is, well, where do we go to learn traditional art techniques? And at the time, First Nations University, we thought, well, there's one place where we can take art classes and attend, but not everybody wants or can afford university. So we thought we just have to have like these workshops and find the people to do this work. And so then it was searching for those artists, because we didn't know those artists. And then we found out those artists were like backed up for months. They had commission projects. If you wanted something from them, you were on a 6-month to a year waiting list. So it was the beginning of creating Buffalo People Arts Institute, right? And so from there, we thought maybe we should incorporate this. And so we could apply for grants, we could hire artists, and then we could start to create it like that. And so that's how it started. And to carry on from Tatanka Boutique, Tatanka being Buffalo, so we have this umbrella of ideas around Buffalo. And so my husband is like, well, we could do the Buffalo high tanning, right? We could do the boutique, we could have the nonprofit. And I have to take a look at that piece of paper, because there's a few other Buffalo ventures that we want to get involved in. But just for you to know, when we opened the boutique that first day, when we started pricing things, I realized that I didn't think about making money, right? And so looking back, it was more about a social enterprise. It should have been a collective. So if there's any regret that I have for having that business, is I didn't have it as a social enterprise from the beginning, because I never intended to make money from it. I just intended it to create, art, as for our art to be considered on par, if not more, than what Western art is considered, right? And so even when we tried to evaluate art within our community, there was one person everybody said could do it, and she was non-Indigenous, right? And so it's like, well, where's our Indigenous art appraisers? That brought up another issue, right? And so with all of these things that were coming our way, it was like, well, we need really our own art institute, like Santa Fe of the North, right? The Santa Fe Indian Art Institute of the North, where we host workshops, we create this educational institute where people can come and they can learn about quill work, about moccasin making, about star blanket making, about parfleche design and creating, and learning about buffalo and how to work with buffalo, right? And so that is the traditionalist of the traditionalist art form, is how the buffalo are everything. We used every part of them, right? And when I've been told that's a PhD on its own, just to go and study what are all the uses of the buffalo. Somebody needs to go and get a doctorate in that. And and so maybe in the future, maybe I'll become a doctorate of buffalo. I don't know.
What that I think I know a few people that should have
At least, well, with I think like in 2015, you came to Fort Peck for the Buffalo Treaty, and
Mhm.
Kequahtooway was there and connecting with the Buffalo Treaty. And can you tell us a little bit more what attracted you? And you've been a really strong supporter, participant, and like signatories of the Buffalo Treaty almost since its beginning.
Yeah. Well, I know that when we went down to the States, I think I think we were a day later, a day early to the event. So, but were able to attend. They had the White Buffalo Calf Woman a theater interpretation by the young people, and I was like, wow, this is like top notch, theater. And then we got to go out to the site to go see where the event was going to happen. So the teepees were set up in the buffalo. I think, if we had a telescope, we could see where the buffalo were, but we weren't able to actually see the buffalo. But we got to be in the place where you guys were. And so for me, it started. I try to pinpoint when did all this start, because my adopted sister said, Jolie, you're so obsessed with buffalo. Why is that? And I was like, yeah, why am I? But I should have asked her, why aren't you? Right? Because we talk about being from the Buffalo Nation, Tatanga Oyate, right? And Pate Oyate. I've been using that more, Pate, meaning that female buffalo, because I keep having discussions over buffalo, bison, tatanga, pate. My husband's. I try to say, what's Soto for buffalo? Mushkate bajiki, right? And then ini, learning all these ways to say buffalo. We went to a conference in Las Vegas this past year, just before everything hit, and we asked a fellow from I think it was Oklahoma. We're like, well, how do you guys say buffalo? And it almost sounded like bate. It was like babe, like that almost like. And so I was like, how come I'm so obsessed, and why isn't everybody else, right? And so I started researching and the Buffalo Treaty and listening to Dr. Leroy Little Bear, and then just kind of Googling anything I could find. I'd buy books about the buffalo, and a lot of the books about the buffalo that are out there are a lot about how the buffalo were saved, but not necessarily about the buffalo themselves, right? So there's a few books up out there that are actually talk about like trying to get into the mind of a buffalo, right? and so I've been like, why am I searching this out? So I look at my spirit name, Amba Zitkana Howashte, which means morning bird with good voice. Because people would say, oh, you're a buffalo woman. But if you look at my spirit name, there's no buffalo in it, right? And so when I would go to when I went to Yellowstone, and I saw all the birds that were surrounding the buffalo, and I was like, what kind of birds are those? And you can search them up, and they call them buffalo birds. That's it, right? And it's like, well, what kind of birds are they though, other than buffalo birds? And so I think, well, maybe I'm that symbol, that bird that sits on the buffalo, picks the bugs, and sometimes you'll see that bird just sitting on the rump looking around. They're not doing nothing, they're just sitting there. They're just like, oh, I'm so protected, right? This is the safest place for me to be. And just enjoying the majesty of it all, being able to just know that I'm protected. I think so if there was an interpretation of my spirit name and how it relates to the buffalo, I think it's that protection, right? That safety, but acknowledging that there's this moment in time, not even like 150 years ago, Like there are people alive on this planet that are 120 years old. So it hasn't been that long that the buffalo were snuffed out, right? And so for me, it's like, well, how come we've forgotten them? Why aren't they talked about, right? And even within our communities, where are the buffalo songs? Where are the buffalo stories? You know, where are those buffalo rubbing stones within our communities? Where's our homage, our altars, right? Or our museums, our stories, like the books, coloring pages even, right? And so, you know, it's about, for me, it's like this really deep mourning, right? And it's this mourning period that a lot of our people are in, right? And so just with uncovering these layers of onions, right? I always think of Shrek. You know that when Donkey's telling him, you know, you're like the onion, peeling back the layers, and I don't mean to jest about it, but it's us, right? That's how life is. It's this series of sadness and happiness, sadness and happiness. And so the happiness part is discovering I'm part of the Buffalo Nation, but the sadness of it is realizing that they were killed off. They weren't just vanished. I always wondered, the history says vanished, disappeared.
Sure.
And so it's like magical. What happened? Did they just a hole open up and they just all fell in? Like, what's the magic about it, right? And it's really this point in history that it was very traumatic for Indigenous people and very shameful for a lot of the people that were involved in the genocide. And so no wonder why we don't talk about them, right? No wonder why there isn't any museum or even roads, you know, like or like memorials for them. They've been just wiped off the face of this earth, right? And so for me, having the Buffalo People Arts Institute is about like, let's share this and let's tap into this blood memory, this DNA, and let's look at it from the positive point of view that blood still runs through us, and that we have that buffalo DNA in us, right? And I joke because I share I have this buffalo hump, right? And so I remember when I was a little girl, I was so sure it was something bad. I got my mom to go take me to the doctor to get it x-rayed, and because I was young and I had this hump and I was skinny. And so we went and the doctor came back and he's like, nope, it's nothing. You just have a hump. We don't know why. And I always was wondering, why do I have this hump? And so now it's like, oh my goodness, it's my buffalo hump, right? Everybody has their blood memory or their DNA of that buffalo come through in different ways, you know, and for me, it's the hump, right? For some of us, we have those songs. Some of us have those stories. Some of us, we have, you know, a stocky movement, right? And you know, and for me, I like to think that this is my buffalo hump. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. You know, it's something that I've looked at a little bit in my work as well, is you know, the willful destruction and erasure of buffalo, and how that's affected us and continues to affect us, and that, you know, we're carrying that. And I think, you know, as part of the recovery, it's around remembering and, you know, speaking about and singing about and making visible again, right? And so, you know, this brings me to one of your initiatives that you're working on, which is to, you know, remove the name of arguably one of the most egregious colonizers in the prairies, Edgar Dewdney, and the destruction that he's responsible for, and the starvation policies and all of that. You're wanting to change the name of the road that's named after him. Can you maybe share a little bit about that and how that came to be?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I do my best to do work that doesn't deal with so much conflict, right? And because I used to work as a politician, and for 2 years I was a counselor on my First Nation, and I found that that probably was the most anxiety-ridden, um, conflict-infested, um, work that I had to do, because the thing is, you never knew what was going to come from day to day, right? So you're always dealing with conflict, and you never knew what it was, right? It could be just like dealing with like wild dogs, or it could be dealing with like Indian affairs and kind of the mandate of the Indian Act, right? And so I have this, I built this kind of reactionary personality from that experience. And so in my work now, I'm always like, well, what can I do that I don't think has a lot of conflict? And for some, I thought, well, because I thought everybody else would be like on the side of reconciliation, right? And so I thought this was probably the most doable thing that we could do here in Regina, is change the name of a street that glorified one of the landowners that used to live here, and somebody who actually named the road after himself, that it was time for a change.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was a landowner here, and a lot of the landowners, if you look at Regina, they name streets after themselves, right? Because they knew the politicians, they knew the people who were creating the city, so they made the recommendations about, I own land here, this is what you should name it, right? And so if you look at like countries like in Europe, when they were taken over by fascist regimes, at a time where like we don't want to be identified with that anymore, they made name changes, right? And so you look at Regina, we're talking about truth and reconciliation. So I thought, well, what should be the most a non-conflict, the best example of a name that should be changed, that I think that most of the people should agree on, and that was Dudney Avenue. Except, now that I'm in it, I think we've been talking about it for about 4 years now. It started off with of course, my cat. The department. I don't think that's the proper name, but it was something like that. And it was just a letter saying, this is how, oops, am I okay? This is my internet connection's unstable.
A little bit, but you're back.
Oh, okay. So it started off with a letter based on the Reconciliation Regina formation, the group that was formed. They were asking, how can we indigenize our city, basically. I'm paraphrasing. It's not as simple as that being said that though, right? So I came up with a letter, and I thought, this is what we could do: build the world's biggest buffalo, change our street names, specifically change Dudney to Buffalo Avenue. Or at the time we owned Tatanka Boutique, and we thought, well, maybe we can't be Tatanka Avenue because people might think it's a marketing ploy for our business. But now the business isn't closed, and I think Tatanka Avenue would be a great name for it, and so we said, well, identifying just kind of things that we can work on within a community, right? And so when we put that forth to the Civic Naming Committee, we talked to some city employees, and they were like, yes, we need to work on that. Unfortunately, the Civic Naming Committee chair wasn't on the in, and so she was interviewed by the reporters, and she said, there's no way we can do this name change. And and unfortunately, that started the beginning of kind of the pros and the cons against the name change, right? And so right now, the opponents against her are saying it's going to cost a lot of money for the people who live on that street to change their addresses and their mail and all that. But what's really ironic is the RCMP depot, the place where they train all the RCMP members in the country, the head office is on that street. So for me, and then, one of the first uniforms of the RCMP were the buffalo jackets, right? And so, and I've seen some of those buffalo jackets in some of the museums. And so they said they weighed a ton when they would have to wear them. They were super warm though. But, it's just very symbolic. Wouldn't that be sweet if the RCMP, the head office now was located on Buffalo Avenue, right?
They still
And
have buffalo on their
maybe,
badge.
They still
yeah,
Every one of them walk with a buffalo on their arms there, and they
yeah.
ignore it. They have it there, and they're ignoring it. The RCMP, which is, yeah.
Yeah, so then if you change that name, you'd have to bring up this history. You would have to acknowledge the history of Regina, known as Pile of Bones.
Mm-hmm.
Even in our nickname, the buffalo are erased from in that nickname. It's Pile of Buffalo Bones, and some of the rhetoric on it is still about how the buffalo vanished, how they disappeared. And so for me, if we change the name, we would have to talk about the history, how they were systematically killed off to make way for Western settlement and to force us to sign treaty, right? And force us to become wards of the state and to rely on people like Dewdney to give us rations. But what did Dewdney do? He fulfilled his obligations to the point of well, I'm going to give you rations, but I'll wait until those rations spoil and are unfit to eat. But then I'll give them to you, right? And so, how evil! And the street, Dewdney or Dewdney Avenue, it runs through the heart of Regina, east to west. It's the only street. No other street goes through the heart. All the other streets are half streets, or they don't go all the way. They're cut off by one or other roads. But Dewdney is the only street that runs through. And should the heart of Regina be represented by somebody like Dewdney, or should it be represented by some animal that was, of so high importance to us as Indigenous people, that that we relied on them for everything in the past, in the present. We still rely on them for everything. I still see them there. Their skulls are in our ceremonies. Those songs are there in our ceremonies. And so, some of us have the buffalo humps, right? And so they're still alive within us. So that's that legacy component that I think that people need to understand, why it's so important to make those name changes.
Wow. Thank you so much for taking us on a journey of Buffalo and the work that you're doing, and I love that it's your family. I don't think I've ever seen you without everyone, and I just love that it's your partner and your kids, and everybody's involved in your projects. And it's I think that we focus a lot on, and rightly so, about grasslands ecosystems and the buffalo's role in that, and the buffalo's role in renewing those lands, and our work in terms of our connection, in a cultural way. But I also, I really value the work that's done in urban centers, to help our own people reconnect to the buffalo that are living in those centers. And I think that's so important, the work that you're doing there. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like that you bring that buffalo consciousness. And as that
Yeah.
a lot working on the ground and bring them the hooks and being able to have that relationship and that vibration with the land. But it is more, that relationship is so more. The Buffalo Treaty, it's a treaty of cooperation, renewal, and restoration. And I think the Buffalo People Art Institute really embrace all those models, both being on the ground, being in your spirit, being in the song. And I'm always so impressed how you, in your everyday action, I think every time you wake up in the morning, you're kind of, as you see, thinking about the buffalo, you find ways to implement the intent of the Buffalo Treaty by all you do, by being name change, by bringing people to reconnect with. And it is not just the physical animals, is the whole thing for that consciousness. So I want to really thank you for all the buffalo consciousness that you're spreading across. It keeps vibrating all over when we see you or we hear about your work.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I do. You know, I heard somebody say something about a building once and how the elders were the manifestational glue of that building and that they needed to have a space within that building. And and now I'm like, well, I wrote a Buffalo manifesto for myself, and in my bio I thought, the buffalo are the manifestational glue that holds my world together, right? And so I just wish that everybody else would come along on this journey and just understand how resilient we are, because of the buffalo, and that there's so much that we can overcome if we just remember that we're buffalo people, right? And what does that mean for our heart, for our spirit, for our soul, for our mind, for our body, for our families? So, yeah, so that's why I share the stories. I mean, like, oh, I wish we're all buffalo people, even if you love turtles and puppies and kitties and birds, right? And so we're the basis, our basis being is that buffalo spirit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're on our way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're on our way. Which is
Thank you. And if you
thank you.
feel that anyone can do anything to help you in Regina or anything, I will put the link into what is your website for the Buffalo People Art Institute if people want to reach you?
We just have a Facebook page under Buffalo People Arts Institute, and we one of our bigger projects is we want to create a cultural institute. Yeah, so the Buffalo People Arts Institute and Cultural Center.
Sounds good.
So that's going to be, what's that?
We'll be your first visitors when it's done.
You guys need to come and help us.
Yeah. Okay, that too.
to build it. Yeah, so we're planting those seeds, and that's one of the things that we'd like to create here, somewhere within this area. Yeah. Right. So thank you for giving me this time to be able to talk. And I want to hear you guys and share your own visions and stories and thoughts, and maybe not right now at this time, but I can't wait to take a look at the website and see all the stories that are going to be there about buffalo.